Today on I'll Tell You, the astounding novel written by Gabriel García Márquez, Chronicle of a Death Foretold. The day Santiago Nasar was killed, he woke up at 5:30 in the morning, having attended the wedding of Angela Vicario the day before. He was heading to the port to greet the bishop who was coming by boat to give the town his blessing. Santiago was the only son of a marriage of convenience. His father was Arab, owned a ranch, and liked weapons, while his mother was sensitive and only loved her son. That morning, Santiago had a headache and had had strange dreams the night before, but neither he nor his mother, Plácida Linero, foresaw the danger awaiting him. That morning he had breakfast dressed in white linen. Victoria Guzman, his maid and cook, knew he was going to be killed, but she did not tell him anything because, deep down, she wished he were killed. A warning letter for Santiago lay on the floor of the house, stating who would kill him, why, and at what time. But when Santiago left, neither he nor anyone else had seen it. Santiago exited through the main door and headed toward the port to greet the bishop. Passing near Clotilde Armenta's shop, Pedro and Pablo Vicario, 24-year-old twins, were already waiting for Santiago to kill him. However, Clotilde asked them to put off their business out of respect for the bishop, who did not disembark but gave his blessing from the boat. Santiago was disappointed, as he had hoped to kiss his hand. On his way back, he met Margot, who invited him home for breakfast, but Santiago promised to return as soon as he changed his clothes. Many people at the port knew Santiago was going to be killed, but no one dared to warn him. The circulating scandal was that the beautiful Angela Vicario, who had married the day before, had been returned to her parents' house because her husband found she was not a virgin. No one could explain how poor Santiago Nasar ended up being implicated in such a mess, but it was certainly known that Angela's brothers were waiting to kill him. By the time Margot's mother left to notify Plácida Linero about the assassination attempts against her son, it was too late. Santiago had already been murdered. Gabriel García Márquez was one of the most important writers of the 20th century. Born in Aracataca, Colombia, in 1927, he was a fundamental writer in the development of the Latin American literary boom. As a child, he absorbed stories from oral traditions told by his grandparents, which he would later capture in his works. He studied law and journalism at the National University and worked as a journalist at El Espectador. At the age of 25, he published his first novel, La Hojarasca, or Leaf Storm, which was an outline for his masterpiece, 100 Years of Solitude. In 1982, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature. Gabo's work has been translated into a multitude of languages, and he is the most widely read Latin American author. His style meticulously described spaces and characters, told stories with time jumps, and crafted his sentences with a poetic style, managing to recreate reality in a magical way. Bayardo San Roman, the man who returned Angela Vicario, had come to the town 6 months before the wedding. He was around 30 years old, very wealthy, had golden eyes, a narrow waist, and seemed like a sad man. No one ever knew why he truly came. It was said he wandered from town to town looking for a bride to marry. The night he arrived, he hinted at the cinema that he was a train engineer and spoke of the urgency of building a railroad. It was never quite clear how he met Angela, but supposedly one day Bayardo saw Angela walking down the street with her mother and declared he would marry her. Angela was the youngest daughter of a poor family. Her father, Poncio Vicario, was blind and a goldsmith for the poor. Purísima del Carmen, her mother, had been a school teacher until she married. The family's 2 eldest daughters had married very late, and an intermediate daughter died of fever. Angela was the most beautiful of the 4, but had an air of helplessness and a poverty of spirit that foreshadowed an uncertain future. Bayardo San Roman proposed marriage to Angela. She was not very convinced about becoming his wife, but he had captivated the family with his charms. Purísima asked Bayardo San Roman to prove his identity.
since until then no one knew who he was. Bayardo brought his family to put an end to the various conjectures and gossip circulating in town about his identity. There were 4 of them. His mother, Alberta Simons, a tall mulatto from Curaçao who spoke Spanish mixed with Papianto. His sisters, newly bloomed, looked like 2 restless fillies. And his father, General Petronio San Roman, a hero of the civil wars of the previous century and one of the conservative regime's greatest glories for having put Colonel Aureliano Buendia to flight in the disaster of Tucurinca. The wedding date was set soon and would have been earlier if not for the mourning the Vicarios were observing. Likewise, the couple's new home was already prepared, a house on the hill that belonged to the widower Schius and was the most beautiful house in town. No one would have thought that Angela Vicario was not a virgin, given that no one had known her to have any previous boyfriends, and she had grown up with her sisters under the rigor of an iron mother. Before the wedding, Angela wanted to commit suicide, but lacking the courage, she resolved to tell her mother, who assured her that almost all women lost their virginity in childhood accidents, and that there were tricks to deceive the husband, such as replacing the sheet with another that could display the linen sheet with the stain of honor on the first morning. Angela married with that illusion, and Bayardo San Roman must have married with the illusion of buying happiness with the colossal weight of his power and fortune. For the more the party plans increased, the more wild ideas he came up with to make it grander.
General Petronio San Roman and his family arrived in a ceremonial boat from the National Congress, along with several distinguished personalities and many gifts. The groom was given a convertible automobile with his name engraved in Gothic letters, and the bride was given a set of pure gold cutlery. The final act ended at 6 in the afternoon, when the honored guests said goodbye, and the boat left with its lights on, leaving a trail of pianola waltzes. The newlyweds appeared shortly after in the open-top car, and after celebrating for a while, Bayardo took his terrified wife to his dream house. The public revelry dispersed in fragments until midnight. Santiago, who liked to calculate the party expenses, was celebrating and drinking with Enrique, Cristo Bedoya, and even the Vicario brothers 5 hours before he was killed. In the early morning, Bayardo San Roman handed Angela Vicario over to her mother-in-law without uttering a single word. Purissima Vicario furiously beat her daughter, and when the twins returned home a little before 3 in the morning, they heard Angela's sentence against Santiago Nasar, the one who had supposedly deprived her of her virginity. The Vicario twins surrendered at the church a few minutes after the crime, and the Vicario's lawyer argued the thesis of homicide in legitimate defense of the family's honor. The twins searched for Santiago Nasar at the house of Maria Alejandrina Cervantes, who ran a brothel with mulatto women and had a deep affection for Santiago, who was in love with her in his adolescence, until his father discovered the affair. Afterwards, they went to the pigsty warehouse, where they kept their knives for butchering pigs, and chose the 2 best they had. They wrapped them in a cloth and went to sharpen them at the meat market. Faustino Santos stated that he had seen them and heard them announce that they would kill Santiago. No one paid attention to them because they thought they were drunk, but Faustino communicated what had happened to a police officer who stopped to buy a pound of liver for the mayor's breakfast. The officer, named Leandro Pornoy, who was getting milk for the mayor, understood the brothers' intentions and warned Colonel Lázaro Aponte. The colonel went to Clotilde's shop, where the twins were waiting for Santiago, and merely confiscated their knives. The Vicario brothers had told their intention to more than a dozen people who went to buy milk, and these people had spread the word everywhere before 6 o'clock. Clotilde sent an urgent message to Victoria Guzman, Santiago's maid, to warn him of the danger, but she never alerted Santiago to the threat. The ravages of the stab wounds were the beginning of the autopsy that Father Carmen Amador was forced to perform on Santiago Nasar due to the absence of Dr. Dionisio Iguaran.
7 of the numerous wounds were mortal. He had been injured in the pancreas, lung, liver, arms, and hand. The autopsy was performed inside a public school in the town. Meanwhile, the Vicario brothers were locked in jail, unable to sleep because their entire bodies and clothes smelled of Santiago. In fact, the whole town smelled of Santiago Nasar. The entire Vicario family left the town, even the eldest daughters with their husbands, on the initiative of Colonel Aponte. They went to Manaure without anyone realizing it, near Riohacha, where the twins were imprisoned. After being released from jail, Pedro Vicario, jobless and loveless, rejoined the armed forces 3 years later and earned the insignia of first sergeant. Bayardo San Roman, after returning Angela Vicario, drank so much on Yuses Hill that he was found in a state of emergency due to alcohol intoxication. Bayardo's mother and sisters went to accompany him in his grief. They later left the town, and both the house on the hill and the convertible car disintegrated over the years. Angela Vicario never made any mystery of her misfortune, and recounted it with its details to whoever asked, except for the secret that could never be clarified: who, how, and when the real cause of her prejudice was, as no one believed that it had truly been Santiago Nasar, who was too proud to notice her. Angela began to write to Bayardo. Little by little, the letters became weekly, but there was no reply. It was enough for Angela to know that he was receiving them, but it was like writing to no one. One dawn, around the 10th year, she was awakened by the certainty that he was naked in her bed. Angela then wrote him a feverish letter of 20 pages, in which she shamelessly released the bitter truths that had been rotting in her heart since her ill-fated night. One August midday, while Angela was embroidering with her friends, Bayardo San Roman, fatter and older, appeared with a suitcase of clothes to stay, and another identical suitcase containing almost 2,000 letters she had written him, sorted by date in packets sewn with colored ribbons, and all unopened. When the twins left the pigsty with other knives, which this time they hid under some newspapers, they went to the house of Prudencia Cotes, Pablo Vicario's fiancée. Prudencia already knew the brothers' intentions and would never have married Pablo if he had not carried out his duty as a man. Prudencia waited in the kitchen until she saw them leave, and continued waiting for 3 years until Pablo Vicario was released from jail and became her lifelong husband. From there, the twins went to Clotilde's shop to wait for his victim. She begged the twins not to murder Santiago, out of respect for the bishop, so the Vicario twins went to wait for him at the main door of his house. Santiago had just left Cristo Bedoya at Yamil Shaumi's shop and went in to see his fiancée, Flora. Flora's father, Miguel, told Santiago that the Vicario twins wanted to kill him and that he could hide there or take a shotgun to defend himself. But Santiago left quickly, unarmed, heading towards his house. 5 minutes earlier, in the kitchen, Victoria Guzman had told Blasida Linero what everyone knew: there was never a death more predicted. The assassins came running towards the house with bare knives. Blasida Linero barred the main door of the house, thinking her son was already inside, but only heard Santiago's desperate knocks as he was being stabbed against the door. The twins stabbed him multiple times and expected him to fall, but he did not drop, and, according to the brothers, he seemed to be laughing. When they thought they had killed him, they ran towards the church. Santiago stood up, holding his entrails, and tried to enter through the kitchen door. He crossed the house of some neighbors who were bewildered by the commotion and Santiago's appearance, and as soon as he entered his own house, he died. And this was the story masterfully written by Gabriel García Márquez. Do you think the Vicario brothers announced the murder hoping they would be stopped? Did you know the novel is based on real events? What do you think about the book's themes being revenge, honor, and gossip? Write your opinions in the comments. I always read them. If you liked it, like and subscribe to the video. If you want to support me, you can buy my book, The Spectacle of Life. Details are in the description. A hug, and until next time.